In today's video, we're back with some updated NHL trade rumors, and we're focusing on the Calgary Flames, the Chicago Blackhawks, some updates on the Maple Leafs, as well as some potential landing spots for Anaheim's Corey Perry. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. Welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned, we're back today with some updated NHL trade rumors. There's all kinds of talk around the NHL. Many players expected to potentially be on the move between being traded or potential free agency candidates here coming up soon. I want to get started today with the Calgary Flames. Now there's been some renewed talk around who they might be trading here out of the team to kind of shake things up, especially on their blue line. It's no secret that forward James Neal is on the market, and getting a deal done for him might prove to be difficult considering the absolutely abysmal year he had in his first year of a 5-year contract with the Flames. So trading him will be challenging unless they take back another bad contract. So that might not happen. Hard to say. But on the blue line, they do definitely want to shake things up for sure. And they have a couple of guys in Travis Hamonic and TJ Brodie with 1 year left on their contracts who they'd like to move along here before they get to unrestricted free agency. Likely shed some salary cap as well. They do have a big contract to do for pending RFA Matthew Tkachuk. It's not quite clear what direction they're going to go with for him. They could go with a bridge deal, 3 or 4 years, or they very well could go for an 8-year deal and get it out of the way now. But it kind of boils down to what they're willing to pay on an annual basis, which will kind of help determine the term there as well. But with Brodie and Hamonic, you get two veteran defensemen. Brodie technically is a lefty, but normally plays the right side. There's certainly a fair bit of teams I think that would be interested in either one. Neither contract's overly large, so therefore there's a lot of teams looking for right shot defensemen all the time, and a couple of the teams that likely could be interested will kind of depend on what else they do. I mean, for example, the Winnipeg Jets might be looking for a right shot defenseman. Obviously, they have Jacob Trouba, who's likely going to be traded. They also have unrestricted free agent Tyler Myers. So depending on what happens with those guys, if they're both out the door, then there is a strong possibility that maybe that they could look to the Flames, because they are going to have to bring in a defenseman from somewhere, either through free agency or trade, and it's not quite clear. More likely in a Jacob Trouba trade, they don't get a top 4 right shot defenseman in return. If a team already has that type of player, they're likely not going to be trading for Trouba. So more likely they get future considerations from Trouba. That's my gut instinct, at least a package of picks or prospects. More likely what would be coming back. Of course, they could possibly be trading out a forward as well to kind of make some more salary cap space, because they get some big forward contracts they're going to sign up. So a lot going on with Winnipeg. They very well could have a very different looking defense core next year, so they might be in the market. Of course, you get the Maple Leafs, who's been rumored to be looking for a right shot defenseman for some time. Not quite sure that that the Flames guys here that are going to be on the market are likely what they're looking for. Of course, you also have some other teams, even like Tampa, who are rumored to be in on the Erik Karlsson scenario. Obviously, if Karlsson doesn't land there, they might be looking to bring in another guy like a Brodie or a Hamonic might fit there as well. And there's lots of other teams too. So right shot defensemen certainly come as a premium in the NHL. The Flames are looking to move one or both of these guys during the offseason here. So we'll see where they end up. But there's certainly plenty of teams that should have interest. Jumping over to the Anaheim Ducks in the Corey Perry situation. Now, of course, a few days ago, I did a video talking about top candidates to be bought out this summer. Of course, I put Corey Perry high on that list. Of course, it was later revealed within a day or so later by the NHL insiders Pierre LeBrun and Darren Dreger that the Ducks were indeed looking at a buyout. But of course, first want to explore possibly trading him and maybe even retaining some salary, which would be required. I've seen some people suggest maybe he should go to the Maple Leafs. I'm not really sure that would really be a fit. Some people have said maybe swap him for Marleau. I don't really see that happening myself. Obviously, as we know, Marleau likely does want to go west. Anaheim would be a fit for the personal situation he's looking to satisfy. But he's got 1 year left on his deal. Perry has 2. Perry makes more money. I just don't see that being an even swap. So I don't see that happening. I've also seen some people suggesting that if Perry were to be bought out, that maybe the Leafs would sign him to a short-term, cheap contract, because obviously he's still going to be getting paid a big chunk of money from Anaheim to not play for them. So whoever signs him likely is going to get him fairly cheap, at least compared to what he's making now. So I've seen some suggestions, and I think that mostly came from a Toronto newspaper who kind of suggested Toronto, Tampa, as well as Nashville, some potential landing spots for him. But I'm really not sure that's the way they would go. Toronto has enough of their own issues right now. Even adding Perry on a 1 or 2 year contract for even $1 or $2 million it sounds okay and maybe would work. But I mean, Corey Perry's obviously from Ontario, plans to retire in London where he played junior hockey. That's going to be his retirement city where he kind of spends the rest of his post-hockey days, I guess. But he's been playing away from there his entire NHL career. I really don't see there being a big desire to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs, although I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility he might be interested, because obviously he more than likely grew up cheering for the Leafs being a kid from Ontario. But either way, I'm not sure I really see the connection there with how the Leafs are trending right now. But either way, Corey Perry likely is going to be moved. If he's bought out and he can go sign as a free agent, it's speculated he could get probably a 2-year contract around $2 million. I think many teams would take a chance on him for that price tag, but trading for him, even with retained salary and having to pay him, $4.5 million or more dollars, like, I just don't see that being real easy to do unless they can shed a bad contract themselves, which is always usually the case with these types of contracts. I'm just not sure that there's a contract out there that would work well for Anaheim for what they want to accomplish. So either way, I think more than likely he gets bought out, signed somewhere as a free agent. I could see one of the contending teams maybe look to add him on a cheap contract to add his experience, to certainly be an extra piece to maybe help them get over the top. But I'm not really sure he's a fit in Toronto. But I guess crazier things have happened as well. It's being reported that the Chicago Blackhawks might go shopping for a defenseman this offseason as well, and they reportedly have interest in Columbus Blue Jackets defender Ryan Murray. Now, currently, right now, they still have long-term veterans Seabrook and Keith under contract for a number of years. Not really clear right now if they plan to talk to either one about waiving their no-trade clauses and maybe moving on. The Seabrook contract is longer and more expensive even than Keith's, so I don't see that even being a remote possibility. The possibility would exist. I think there'd be a little bit of a market for Duncan Keith should they decide to go down that route, but there really hasn't been any chatter around that for some time, so I'm not sure if that's something the Blackhawks will consider doing. Of course, they had Gustafsson have a career year last year, put up 17 goals. It's hard to say if he can duplicate that or not. They do have some interesting young D prospects on the way, like Adam Boqvist and Yoka Haru and Nicolas Baudouin. Hard to say what kind of impact they can have next year, though, and it has been reported that they're interested maybe looking at a guy like Ryan Murray. Of course, in Columbus, they've got a pretty solid top 4 defense. Ryan Murray very well could be expendable. Certainly not a means that they need to shed cap space because they have tons of it, especially if Panarin, Bobrovsky, and Duchesne don't return. Obviously, the Blue Jackets have given up a lot of picks and prospects here recently, and it might give them an opportunity to kind of recoup some of those, although I don't think a return for Ryan Murray would be very significant, but he might prove valuable to a team like Chicago looking for, bottom pair defensemen here who can kind of fill out that roster while they wait for some of their prospects to continue developing. Some quick updates here on the Leafs as well. I know many have said that the Marleau house has either been sold or is listed for sale. I'm not quite sure if it actually is sold or not. There's different reports out there, but apparently that was a plan from a number of months ago. Apparently Patrick Marleau had found out about some U.S. tax implications he wasn't aware of. So it was his plan all along, regardless if he stayed in Toronto or not, to sell that property, and then possibly, if he ends up staying, to re-rent it from the new owners for at least another year, so he can remain living in the home. So apparently that's something that's been in the works for a long time, so it doesn't necessarily mean a foregone conclusion here that he's gone from Toronto or will be gone. I still think there's a pretty good likelihood that he does move on from the Leafs this offseason, but it's not a foregone conclusion here that just because the house was listed for sale that he's definitely gone. They still have to find the right deal to work for the team and for the player. And of course, where he has a no trade clause, he can certainly be as picky as he wants to be with that scenario. So there's not a guarantee that Marleau definitely leaves Toronto for sure. I think they'll work hard together to try to make it happen, but I guess we'll see. But the house being for sale apparently is not related to that situation. And according to this article as well in the Toronto Sun, they seem to be getting mixed messages on whether or not Connor Brown is actually being shopped or not. Some people seem to think that he's definitely going to be traded, where others think it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Zaitsev being on the move. There's been more talk too about maybe Kapanen being moved as well. It seemed like Janssen might be the more likely one to return if they have to trade one of their RFAs. That Kapanen might be the one to go. I can see Kapanen maybe getting a better return than Janssen, but I guess we will see here. Lots of speculation around the Maple Leafs. There's a lot of unknowns. Kyle Dubas certainly has his work cut out for him. He's going to try to sign Mitch Marner ideally before July 1st. That might prove to be very difficult, so we can kind of line up a lot of their other plans. They got to look at signing Janssen and Kapanen or possibly trading them. You got Hainsey and Gardner or UFA defensemen. You either need to sign them or replace them. It's no easy task, and they only have a limited amount of cap space. One other quick note here as well on Philadelphia Flyers and Kevin Hayes. Now, of course, as we know, the Flyers acquired the rights to Kevin Hayes a while back, but have not had a contract announced here as of yet. They're not in a big rush. They seem still confident they can get him signed. Apparently, he is supposed to be visiting with the Flyers this week and hopefully getting everything ironed out. So for Flyers fans, I don't think you have too much to worry about as of right now. It still looks like the contract likely does get done during his visit with the Flyers this week. Obviously, they gave up a 5th-round pick, but again, the odds of getting that player into the NHL eventually down the road is pretty slim, not to say that it couldn't happen. It's a small price tag to pay to have exclusive negotiating rights with a player that they're very interested in here between now and free agency. So they still have a couple of weeks to get this ironed out. Still plenty of time, but he is visiting with the Flyers this week in hopes to have a contract ironed out. So that is all your latest updates for today. We're getting all the latest speculation around the NHL. So of course, let me know your thoughts and comments down below, and we will continue the conversation in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams. There is plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, subscribe to more content just like this one, and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.